They call me TerRail Jasael Boyd, and from what I'm understanding, folks either love me or hate me, and I'm fine with both. I'm 33, in good shape, and I've got a job that keeps me in and out of folks' homes. People know me as the cable guy. The charming guy who fixes their internet, swaps out modems and never misses an opportunity to leave a lady with a smile. Not that I'm a player or anything, I'm just a guy who enjoys the game of conversation. There's a line I never cross though. I keep things friendly and light. My mother raised me right, and that's something I'll always respect. It's funny how people look at a guy like me. Clean-cut, tech-savvy, social. I'm what you'd call a neighborhood favorite. But lately it's like a storm cloud's been hanging over my head. My mind's been playing tricks on me. There are these blackouts, bits of time where I can't account for myself. I'm talking entire hours just slipping away like they never happened. Friends have started noticing too, asking if I'm alright, if I've been working too much. I tell them it's nothing, that maybe I've been drinking a little too much after work. But it's not the drink. It's something darker. There's this other side of me that I've started calling Trey, though I can't quite explain why or how he exists. It's like he's hiding right behind my eyes, watching me as I go about my day. When I lose time, it feels like he's the one taking over. The strangest part, these missing hours always line up with something I read about later in the news, another brutal attack, another sick predator taken down in the most ruthless way. The headlines always catch my eye as if they're speaking to some buried part of me. There's no connection between the victims, at least not that the cops can see. But me. I see the patterns as if Trey's hand is in every single act. Each of these people deserved what they got: men who hurt kids, women who preyed on the weak, and those who treated human life like it was disposable. Still, knowing doesn't ease the fear. The reality of Trey hit me hardest last Saturday night. I'd gone out for drinks with a couple of buddies, ended up at one of those low-key bars where nobody cares what you're drinking or who you're with. Around midnight I felt that familiar heaviness, like my mind was being shut down with a dimmer switch. The next thing I remember is waking up in my apartment, face down on the couch, a pounding headache rattling in my skull. And then I saw it on the news, another murder. This time it was a man named Douglas Green, a known child trafficker with a history so dark even the cops couldn't stomach it. He was found outside an abandoned warehouse, face bruised, arms broken, and his throat slashed. They said he must have suffered for hours before the end, like someone wanted to make him feel the kind of pain he'd inflicted on others. I sat there, TV remote in my hand, feeling both relief and horror. Relief because, somehow, it felt right that Green was gone. But horror because deep down, I knew Trey had something to do with it. He'd stepped in, done what the justice system couldn't, leaving his signature mark for anyone who cared enough to look. Now I keep myself busy trying not to think too hard about what this means. At work I slip on my mask, the charming, friendly TerRail everyone knows. I walk into these homes, fix the Wi-Fi, chat with the customers like nothing's wrong. But every time I see a new case in the news, a new victim brutalized in some horrible way, my heart beats a little faster. Maybe it's not just Trey who's satisfied with these murders. You see, Trey's not entirely separate from me. He's there, lurking beneath my skin, like a shadow I can't shake. And even though I didn't ask for him, I'm beginning to wonder if he's exactly what this city needs. Last night as I sat in my living room replaying the events of the last few weeks, I felt that familiar heaviness settle in again. It started as a tingling at the base of my skull, spreading down my spine like a slow creeping fog. There's this feeling, like my own body is getting hijacked from the inside out, and there's nothing I can do but watch. And then the blackness. When I came to, I was in my car. My hands were clenched tight on the wheel, the engine idling, and there was the faint smell of iron in the air, blood. My heart skipped and my hands went to my clothes. Nothing, thank God. But on the passenger seat I noticed something, a small, crimson-stained card with the words, "Justice served," scrawled across it in my own handwriting. The sight of it chilled me to my core, but at the same time I couldn't shake a strange, almost comforting thought. Maybe Trey was right. After that I couldn't just go home. I felt compelled, like I had to know where I'd been and what I'd done. I followed the familiar route to the edge of the city, to an old industrial district where the buildings stand like forgotten monuments. Abandoned and silent, they looked like ghosts in the pale streetlight. That's when I saw the flashing red and blue lights up ahead, illuminating the scene in bursts of color. Another body, another "justice served." As I parked a safe distance away, I felt the urge to get closer to see what Trey had done. I crept up to the scene, hiding behind a stack of pallets, watching as the police swarmed around a lifeless body sprawled on the cracked pavement. It was Alan Sturgis, a repeat offender notorious for drugging women and leaving them broken and powerless. And now he was lying there with empty eyes staring up at the dark sky, his life snuffed out in a brutal fashion. A part of me shuddered, but another part, a darker hidden part, felt a twisted satisfaction. Sturgis wouldn't hurt anyone ever again. The following days passed in a blur. At work I plastered on my usual smile, my jokes and easygoing charm masking the turmoil twisting inside me. My coworkers didn't notice a thing. But the news did. Reporters were starting to connect the dots, speculating about a vigilante killer on the loose, someone who was targeting the worst of the worst. And the worst part, the more they speculated, the more I felt like they were talking about me. Last night I found myself in front of a mirror, staring at my reflection. My face was mine, but my eyes, they looked darker, colder, like I didn't recognize the men staring back at me. It was as if Trey had taken root in my soul, blending his essence with mine. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to stop him. But that's when the fear kicked in. Because if I'm not in control, then what's stopping Trey from crossing the line? What's stopping him from turning his vengeance on the innocent? There's no code, no rulebook, nothing keeping him in check. All I have is this hunch that maybe somewhere inside he and I want the same thing. A better world, even if it's painted red with the blood of those who deserve it. I knew I had to find answers. So I started digging, researching everything I could about split personalities, dissociative disorders, anything that might explain what was happening to me. But the more I read, the less I found that fit. It wasn't a disorder. Trey was too intentional, too calculated for that. He was more like an echo of my darkest thoughts, a twisted reflection of my own desire for justice. That night I woke up with a jolt. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from an unknown number flashing on the screen. "You're close, TerRail. Time to accept who you really are." My blood ran cold. How could anyone know? I hadn't told a soul, hadn't given Trey a name outside my own mind. And yet here it was, someone or something taunting me as if they'd been watching me all along. The message brought a sickening truth to light. I wasn't alone in this. I had to make a choice. Either I let Trey take the wheel for good, or I found a way to rein him in, to bury him before he consumed me entirely. But deep down I knew that burying Trey wouldn't be easy. He wasn't just a shadow in my mind. He was me and I was him. After that message, sleep became impossible. I lay there wide-eyed in the dark, my mind a mess of questions with no answers. Who could possibly know about Trey? And why would they taunt me, pushing me closer to the edge? Morning came, but the dread hadn't faded. I went through the motions. Got dressed, downed a cup of coffee, made it to work. But every time my phone buzzed, I felt a jolt of panic. I kept expecting another text, some message meant to drive me further down this twisted path. But there was only silence. My next call was across town at a ritzy high-rise. I did the usual. Smiled, made small talk, checked for outages, and just as I was wrapping up, the client mentioned something that caught me off guard. "Have you been following the news about that vigilante?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and fear. "Seems like they're going after some real scum. People are scared, but I don't know. Part of me thinks the city's better off without those kinds of people." She gave me a hesitant smile, like she was confessing a secret. I forced a laugh. "Yeah, it's wild, huh? Almost like something out of a movie." But inside, my heart was pounding. This wasn't just some movie. It was my life unraveling in front of me. And people were noticing, some even approving, which only made things more twisted. How many others felt like this woman? How many were quietly rooting for Trey without even knowing who he really was? Back at my place, I tried to calm myself down, cracking open a beer, trying to drown out the noise in my head. I sat there nursing my drink, eyes drifting to my laptop on the coffee table. My mind kept circling back to that text. I had to figure out who had sent it, who was watching. With trembling hands, I opened my messages and scrolled through, looking for any detail, any clue I might have missed. But there was nothing. I was about to give up when my phone buzzed again. "Tonight, TerRail. Meet me at the warehouse on South and Vine. Midnight." There it was. Whoever they were, they wanted to meet. And I knew I had no choice. If I wanted answers, if I wanted to understand what Trey was and how to stop him, or worse, how to control him, I'd have to go. The hours dragged until midnight. By the time I arrived at the warehouse, the city was cloaked in darkness. The old building loomed in front of me, abandoned and eerie, its windows broken and covered in graffiti. I parked a block away and walked the rest, each step echoing in the silence. Inside, the air was thick with dust and something else. A tension, a sense of foreboding that prickled along my skin. I moved through the shadows, the dim glow from the streetlights outside casting eerie shapes on the walls. And then I saw him. A tall figure stood at the center of the room, hands tucked into his coat pockets, his face obscured by the shadows. "TerRail," he said, his voice low and steady. "Or should I call you Trey?" The words hit me like a punch. He knew. This stranger knew what even I could barely admit to myself. "Who the hell are you?" I demanded, taking a cautious step forward. "And how do you know about Trey?" The man stepped into the light, his face cold, eyes piercing. "I know because I created Trey." My mind reeled. Created? This guy was either insane or he knew things about me that no one should. I fought to keep my voice steady. "You're saying you made this thing inside me, the one that's been killing," he finished with a slight smirk. "Yes, but it wasn't just me. Trey was already a part of you, waiting for a reason, for a purpose. I just woke him up." He reached into his coat and pulled out a stack of files, tossing them on the ground between us. Curiosity got the better of me and I crouched down, flipping through them. Each file contained photos of the vigilante's victims. Douglas Green, Alan Sturgis, every last one. But there were other names too, ones I hadn't seen before. Future targets marked in red. "You think you're just a pawn in all this?" he asked, his tone dark and confident.